Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make her the cutest that I've ever seen. Give her two lips like roses and clover, and tell her that her lonesome nights are over. You may be able to tell by the song that I just sang for you what I'm reviewing this time. I'm reviewing Jack Pierce's Bring Me a Dream. If you are part of the Minds community, you've certainly seen this advertised. Well, let's get started. Bring Me a Dream is a mystery suspense with a touch of the supernatural. The general premise follows the main character of Alan Parsons, whose life is just plain miserable. His wife has left him and taken his child. He's been laid off, has no prospects of finding a job anytime soon, and to top things off, he seems to be a bit of an alcoholic. He's also in therapy, which, by his own admission, really doesn't seem to do much good. He does have one positive thing in his life: his constant recurring dream of being at a summer camp full of friends that just don't seem to exist in the world that he's in. This leads him to be a little bit obsessed with the dream world, to the point where he even states that if he knew that killing himself would land him in the dream world forever, he would not hesitate to do it. Now, I want to discuss a few of the elements of this book. First of all, it's not a long read. It's fairly compact, but it's as long as it needs to be. Another thing is that the book seems to be divided into two worlds. The first being the real world. And the real world often seems to be more dreamlike than his dream world. There are strange little hints and nuggets of information that kept me going back and checking what I had read to make sure that I was making sense of things. In his dream world, however, he is, as stated before, in a summer camp. And the dreams themselves seem fairly vivid and consistent, which is very uncharacteristic of dreams. And one of the last things I want to address, and trying not to spoil this, is the ending. And I don't feel too bad discussing the ending, as Mr. Pierce, the author, has already said that it would be surprising. And I'm not going to go into massive detail. But I will say it is probably one of the greatest examples of be careful what you wish for. In many ways, the book reads a lot like a parable. Alan's life in the book is provably miserable. In fact, I would not fault him for wanting to constantly stay in the dream world, as many of us who have had pleasant dreams in troubling times could probably attest to. But I don't want to spoil too much of the book here. It's well worth your time and your read. But I really want to touch on some of the things that I like about this. As I said before, it reads a lot like a parable. It seems to touch on the lesson that things aren't always better somewhere else, or the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Also, the book feels a bit, if you'll pardon the reference, Stephen King-ish, as if the world that this book takes place in is part of a much larger universe. Now, this is the first book that I have read by Mr. Pierce, so it very well may be that this is part of some larger universe. And I'm probably going to touch on some of his books in later reviews. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to keep this review fairly short, as covering too much more would spoil a great deal of the book. But I do advise you pick it up. It seems to be well worth your time, and it's one of those few interesting reads that you can fit into an afternoon. Thank you for your time, and enjoy your reading.